Hi there. I'm Lillian Lewis, and welcome to another edition of New Day, New Beginnings. Now, today we're going to be talking about how our lives begin and how we are so very instrumental in how they end. We are. We have a lot to do with how our lives flow as well as how they end. Now, I think we all can agree with the fact that yes, God created us all, and in doing so, He gave us a mind to think and the ability to make choices. We all have that capability. And He gave us all various talents and gifts, and this makes each of us different from one another. That's why we can't compare ourselves to anybody else because each one of us is unique in our own way. And as we grow, we're supposed to obtain knowledge and wisdom. And this in itself enables us to make wise decisions. I mean, we always make decisions, but the difference is making wise decisions. And we already talked about how we can't figure something out ourselves. What's the next thing we do? We go ask a friend or family, a relative or somebody, what do you think about this, that, or the other? And we already discussed that. And we know that doesn't work because that's only their opinion and doesn't make it the right answer, and so forth and so on. We got to know where to go for the right decisions. But not everybody goes to the right place to obtain that wisdom and knowledge. Now, today we're going to be reading from the book of Kings, Second Kings, and we're going to go start in chapter 1, and it's about a king who did it all wrong. He just went about it all wrong in obtaining his knowledge and wisdom. And his name was Ahaziah. Now, he inherited the kingdom from his parents. His father was the king and he ruled with his wife, which was his mother, so forth and so on. But after Ahaziah, inherited the throne, I mean, he continued to reign the same way they did. So he followed in their footsteps, which was worshiping false gods. So they always worshiped idols and false gods, and he's following right in their footsteps. And they were worshiping a god called Beelzebub. And this made the people of Israel, who they ruled, it made them to sin because they were forcing the Israelites to worship their way, which was through the false gods. And the Israelites, they only had one true God. So this was making them be sinful. So this was appearing as evil in God's eyes. And you know what? It provoked God to anger. Let me get this right, Beth. I forgot to get my Bible. It made God so angry that they were forcing, well, he and his family were forcing the Israelites to worship this Beelzebub. Now let's go to 2 Kings chapter 1, and let's go right to verse 2. Verse 2 says, Elijah. Now this is going to tell us about how this all came about. And it came to pass, oh, I meant chapter 1. What did I say? Chapter 2? Chapter 1. I'm sorry. Chapter 1. Um, Verse 2 says, Ahaziah, the king, he fell down through a lattice in his upper chamber. That means he was in his bed and he fell down and that was in Samaria, and he got very sick. Now, here's where it changes. He got very sick from his fall, but then he sent his messengers and he told them to go inquire of this Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, to see whether he was going to recover from his disease. Well, first of all, he started off on the wrong foot because worshiping idols. That in itself provokes God. There shall be no other God before him. We know that. That's one of the 10 commandments. And that's what put the Israelites in sin because they never worshiped anybody but the true God. So now this is not working. But look at verse 3. It says, messengers to go to worship this Beelzebub thing. I got a message on my screen. The same time that he was telling them to go find out from Beelzebub if he was going to survive this, the same time an angel was speaking to Elijah. Now, Elijah is the prophet. And look at verse 3. So the angel of the Lord said to Elijah, the Tishbite, that's where he's from. He told Elijah, go up and meet these messengers of the king and say to them, is it not because there is not a God in Israel? So you ask them, why are you going to ask this Beelzebub thing when you don't have a real God in Israel? Because the Israelites were there, and that they worship the real God. And so now the Lord, therefore, thus saith the Lord. Now, because you're worshiping this Beelzebub instead of the real God, it says, you shall not come down from that bed which you have gone upon. Instead, you will surely die. Wow. And it said, and Elijah departed. He told the messengers what the angel had said to him. And when the messengers, they turned around and went back to the king. They went back to the king, and the king was like, well, why are you back so fast? And they said unto him in verse 6, they said, there came a man to meet us. And he said unto us, go turn again. In other words, go back. Go turn again unto the king that sent you and say unto him, the Lord said, is it not because there is no God in Israel? Why are you worshiping a false God? That you sent these people, these messengers, to inquire of Beelzebub? Just because of that, therefore, you shall not come down from that bed on which you had gone up, but you shall surely die. And the king asked them, well, who told you this? And they said, Elijah, the Tishbite. And everybody knows who Elijah is. Everybody knows he's the prophet. And what Elijah says usually happens because he knows, because God tells him. He sends the angels to tell him what to do. So now that the king knows it's from Elijah, let's look at verse 9. Now the king said he's going to send a captain with 50 of his men. Now, look at verse 9. It says, then the king sent a captain with 50 of his men. And he told him, he said, go up there. And so the captain took his men and went to the top of the hill. And they spoke unto him, meaning Elijah, "Thou man of God, the king said, come down." Okay. But Elijah said, "Well, if I be a man of God, then let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50." But guess what happened? There came down fire from heaven and it consumed him and his 50. But guess what? When the king heard that, he was more determined. So look at verse 11. He sent another captain with another 50. And that captain went up on the hill and he hollered down again, "Oh, man of God, the king hath said, come down quickly." Well, that didn't phase Elijah one way or the other because he answered them the same way. Well, because they're always calling him a man of God. So he said, "Well, if I be a man of God, let fire come down from heaven and consume you and your 50." And again, a second time, the fire of God came down from heaven and consumed him and his 50. But just to show how this king was so determined to do things his way, he sent another party down. Now, I'm saying all this to say that he doesn't care how many men he's jeopardizing. All he's doing is trying to get it to be his way. So now he's sending down a third 50. And the third captain, he he already saw what happened to the first two and their men. He went down with a whole different attitude. He didn't go defiant, he didn't go determined. Look what it says in verse 13. The third captain went down with his 50, but and came and fell on his knees before Elijah and besought him. He begged him. He begged him. And he said unto him, "O man of God, I pray thee, let my life and the life of these 50 servants be precious in your sight." Be precious in your sight. And behold, verse 14, there came fire down from heaven and burned up the first two captains of the former 50. And therefore, and he saw all this. So he's saying, "I've seen what you can do." So he's begging, "Now let my life be precious in your sight, me and my 50. And the angel of the Lord said unto Elijah, all right, go down with him. Don't be afraid. Go down with him." So Elijah got up and he went down with him to the king. And he said to the king, he said, "Thus saith the Lord, for as much as thou hast sent messengers to inquire at Beelzebub, the god of Ekron, is it not because there is no God in Israel to inquire of his word?" Now he's confronting the king himself. "You mean to tell me you sending these people to Beelzebub? Why? Don't you have a real God in Israel?" Well, they don't, because everything they do is done through false gods. "Therefore, thou shalt not come down off that bed on which you have gone up, but you shall surely die." He told him that straight to his face. And he did die. He died according to the word of the Lord which Elijah had spoken. Determination to ignore God. I mean, I've done it before myself, and I'm sure many of us have. But this is how this chapter alone just shows how this king ended his life and the lives of so many innocent men because he opted to worship and pray up to a false god. You know, he went to the wrong place for his wisdom and his knowledge. He couldn't learn anything. You can't learn anything from a piece of wood or a piece of gold or silver, whatever it's made of, it can't respond to you. And Elijah gave him 3 opportunities to change his mind, but to no avail. Now, think about your own situation. How many times have you been given a second chance to correct whatever you've done that's wrong? I know I've been given second chances many times. And sometimes we're given second chances and we don't even realize it. We get in stuff we don't even know how we got out of. But I'll tell you one thing, provoking God is never a smart move because that's one battle I can guarantee you'll never win. You'll never win because God conquers all in his own timing. Now, let's go to chapter 2. Chapter 2 is going to tell us about 2 men, 2 prophets. Elijah was one of them, and Elisha. He's a younger prophet that's following in Elijah's footsteps, and he travels with Elijah. And it tells exactly, they knew exactly, well, exactly where to go for their knowledge and for their wisdom. But it also shows loyalty of one man to another. Not only are they loyal to God, but they're loyal to each other. Now, the older prophet is Elijah, Elijah, but the younger prophet is Elisha, Elishia. Now, the younger one is, I'll say, an assistant or learning from the older Elijah. Now, let's go to chapter 2, and we're going to start right in verse 1. Now, this is the older Elijah. It came to pass when the Lord would take up Elijah into heaven by a whirlwind. And Elijah went with Elisha, the young one, from Gilgal. Now, Elijah, the older one, said to the younger one, now you stay here, for the Lord has sent me to Bethel. Now, here's the loyalty. The young one says unto him, as the Lord liveth and as your soul liveth, I will not leave you. So they both went down to Bethel. Loyalty, trust one to another. And when they got there, the sons of the prophets there, they came to Elisha, the younger one. Now listen to this. They said to him, do you know that the Lord is going to take away your master at any day? In fact, today, at any moment? And he said, yeah, I know, but hold your peace. In other words, yes, I do know, but don't speak on it. Let this day go as it should go. Hold your peace. And then Elijah, the older one, came to Elisha and said, okay, well, you stay here, for the Lord is now going to send me to Jericho. But the younger Elisha said, nope. Like I told you before, as the Lord liveth and as you live, I will never leave you. So again, together they went to Jericho. But even there, the same response came because the sons of the prophets there, they came to the young Elijah and they said the same thing. Do you know that the Lord will take away thy master from thy head today? And again he said, yeah, I know, but hold your peace. I know it, but don't speak on it. And at that time, Elijah, the older one, said to him, okay, you stay here. The Lord has sent me to Jordan. And again, the young Elijah said the same thing, not leaving you. As long as you live, I will not leave thee. So they two together went on. And 50 men of the sons of the prophets went, but they stood to view afar off, while the two prophets went forward to the banks of the Jordan River. Now, they're at the river. Now, Elijah took his mantle, wrapped it together, and then smote the waters and divided them. And it went dry. So they both went over on dry ground. Now, what does that remind you of? It reminds me of what? Moses. Remember at the Red Sea, he raising his staff and God giving him the power. Hold that staff up there and I'll open the sea. The same way God opened the Red Sea for Moses and the Israelites to cross over, the same way he did with the Jordan River so that Elijah and Elisha could cross over on dry ground. Now, let's go to the next verse 9. And it came to pass when they were gone over, Elijah, the older, said to Elisha, the younger, let me ask, what can I do for you? I wanted to know before I be taken away from you. Now, he's asking the young one, what is it that I can do for you? And the young one says, oh, I pray thee, let a double portion of thy spirit be upon me. That's all he wanted, to be like Elijah, to have that spirit of God. And Elisha said to him, well, thou hast asked a hard thing, but nevertheless, if you see me when I am taken up from thee, it shall be so. But if you do not see me, it will not be so. And it came to pass, they still went on and they talked, and all of a sudden, behold, appeared a chariot of fire and horses of fire and parted them both asunder, meaning it separated them one from the other. And Elijah went up by a whirlwind into heaven. Isn't that what it said in the beginning? He would be taken by a whirlwind up into heaven, and now he was. And in verse 12, the young one, Elijah, he did see it. And he cried, my father, the chariot of Israel and the horsemen thereof. And he saw him no more. And he took up his clothes. He grabbed hold to his clothes. It says, and he rent them in two pieces. And that means he tore them in two pieces. Why? Because he had lost him. He saw him go up to heaven. And to rip your clothes back then meant total distress. He was totally distraught. And he ripped his clothes because he was so hurt. And then after that, he took up the mantle that had fallen off of Elijah. And he went back and he stood by the bank of the Jordan. And he took the mantle that had fell from him, and now he smote the waters. And when he smote the waters, he said, "Where is the Lord God of Elijah?" And when I say he smote the waters, that means he struck it hard. And guess what? The waters parted again. And they parted just like they did for Elijah when they went over. Now Elijah has the mantle, and it is working for him the same way it worked for Elijah. So now Elijah can go back across the Jordan to where the people were in Jericho. And when the sons of the prophets were there at the other side, when they saw him, they said, "The spirit of Elijah does rest on Elisha." And they came to meet him and bowed themselves to the ground before him. So this chapter is showing us the total commitment and loyalty, not only from one man to another, but to God. They were just as loyal to each other, and both of them were loyal to God. Elijah, he was totally committed to God, and Elisha was totally committed to him. So Elijah was taken up to heaven, and Elisha was blessed with the double portion of his spirit, like he had asked for in verse 9. Now, think about yourself. Don't have misplaced loyalties. Don't commit to things that are not of God. Ask yourself, how instrumental will you be in your own life going forward? You have the capability. Use it. Now, right now, I want to share a poem with you that I wrote, and it's called The Golden Staircase. I once saw a golden staircase that led straight to heaven above. It was leading me to our Heavenly Father, full of mercy, kindness, and love. At the top, the gate opened wide, as his arms do when he welcomes you in, to follow in his footsteps, to learn his ways, and a brand new life to begin. He wants our lives to be fruitful, full of joy, happiness, and content. But always remember that by doing his will is a valuable time well spent. Ask yourself, because I'm asking you, how are you spending your time? How are you going to help be instrumental in making your life be what it should be? Think about it, meditate on it. Now, my closing words for today are: we all have plans, but God has a purpose. So ask Him to show you what it is. And until next week, I'm Lelia Lewis. Thanks for joining me.